Hello everybody and welcome to the show. It's Sunday the 14th of April, it's Andy Shed Live Series 18, episode number 4. Just bear with me, it's something I've forgotten to do. Just waiting for Thor the dog to come back in from outside so I can shut the door, because it's a little bit on the chilly side with him out there, but we will get there. Hello to everybody who's in the chat again. Christopher is here. Oh, here he is. Hello Thor. Christopher is here, says hi everybody. Neville is here, he says hope you're well. I am, thank you Neville. Dominic is with us, says he drove to Crewe yesterday. I went on the North Wales coastline for the first time. So the Great Orme tramway is interesting. Yeah, it is. Christopher says, Andy, did you get a photo of my 746? No, Christopher, I've not got any emails for about a week. My email is currently down. I'm still having problems with it. I've just not had a chance to sort it out. In fact, we very nearly weren't here doing a show today. Because I've just got so little time. Bear with me 1 minute. Come on, let's have you. Good boy. Good boy. That's it then. Good boy, Thor. You stop in here now then. Good lad. Good boy. I'm just shutting this a bit. Right. That's Thor back in. Yeah, so little time, really have so little time. I have no time to call my own on any day of the week now. That's why next week there is not going to be a show, because I just don't have time to do it. It's as simple as that. Oh, Joe's here. Hi Andy, did you get my jokes and messages on Messenger? No, I didn't. No, I've not had anything from you on Messenger. What Messenger? Facebook Messenger, was it? No, nothing has come through on there. So I've got no idea what's what's going on with that. No, didn't get anything through there. But like I say, it's all gone a bit Pete-tong this week. All the tech's gone wrong this week. Every piece of tech that could break this week has broke. So, so yeah, it's all gone a bit not as it should be, shall we say, this week. But yeah, not quite right at all. Yes, it says Facebook Messenger. No, not got anything. And I know Facebook Messenger has been working, because I had other pings through on it, but nothing from you, I'm afraid, Joe. Christopher says, I've been riding on W8 class trams all week, doing it again tomorrow with my tram driver friend. Oh, there's still some of those in service then, Christopher. Out there in your neck of the woods. For those who don't know, Christopher is in Australia. That's why all his photos and that come out upside down. But yeah. Right. Okay. Well, it's been relatively quiet's the wrong word to use, really. But yeah, it's been a week, hasn't it? It's been a week. It's not been a good week, it's not been a bad week, it's just been a week. Hasn't it, this week? It's been a week that's been dominated in the news, if you're looking for transport related news, of course, with the funicular runaway in Lisbon. I kind of anticipated that people might be asking about what happened there. Finding out the details has been quite difficult, but the funiculars in Lisbon, and that one in particular, are very old but have been upgraded over the years, and it was one of the upgrades that caused the problem. What happened was I think there were originally 3 funiculars in Lisbon. I think they're on the 4th one now. There were originally 3 and now there's 4. There were originally 2 and now there's 3. But they've opened a new one just a few years ago. But the one that had the accident opened in the late 1800s, and it was originally water powered. Now, the way a traditional funicular works, like famously the very nice one at Linton and Lynmouth down on the south coast, generally it's 2 cars that are permanently connected by a cable that goes round a drum at the top of the hill, and you make the car that's coming down slightly heavier than the one that's going up by whatever means possible. Generally they use water in a ballast tank. Make the one coming down a little bit heavier, and then that one gradually comes down the hill and the other one goes up, and they always work together like that. Now if they are balanced, you can drive the wheel at the top with an electric motor if they're balanced, and that is how the Shipley Glen Cable Tramway does it in Yorkshire, and how some of the other funiculars do it. This one in Lisbon was originally powered by water. It was originally what they call a water balance funicular. Balanced by the cable. And they were worried at the time, the Victorians, that if the cable broke, the thing would run away down the hill. And so it basically had a rack rail alongside the normal running rails. It had like a rack and pinion system, similar, as far as I can work out, similar to what the Snaefell Mountain Railway has today. Not the Snaefell, because they don't have a rack and pinion anymore. Snowdon has a rack and pinion, doesn't it? Snaefell used to have a rack and pinion, doesn't anymore. No, it didn't. It had a fell rail. It had a fell rail, Snaefell. Anyway, this one in Lisbon originally had a rack and pinion. Then they modernised it, and the cars that are on it, the actual vehicles that are on it, are actually built in the 1950s. Originally they were double deckers. They were open top double deckers, the original cars. But the ones that are on it now are single deckers, carry about 40 something passengers, and were built or rebuilt in the 1950s when the thing was modernised, he says. Now at the same time they did a very oddball thing. That particular funicular works on a strange system whereby, because the cars are balanced with this rope, this cable, they are actually electrically powered. But it's not the way most other funiculars do it, by powering the pulley wheel at the top of the hill. These in Lisbon actually have got motors on the cars like a traditional tram. If you look at them up closely, if you look at photos and that, they have a traditional tram controller and an air brake and a hand brake, just like most trams do. And they have enough adhesion to go up and down the hill because they are balanced. If they weren't balanced, they'd never do it. They'd just sit at the bottom and skid. Power is supplied by two overhead wires side by side, which is why they have two little pantographs on the roof, supplied around about 600 volts DC. Now, what they have as a handbrake apparently is a brake that clamps onto the slot that the cable runs in. So if you imagine you've got your two tram tracks, in the middle you've got a metal slot in the road that the cable runs in, and there's a thing underneath the tram that goes through the slot and is attached to the cable. Yeah. Now, also on the tram there is like a vice that clamps on to that metal top of that conduit, and that is the thing that should theoretically hold the tram. You know, it should be able to hold the tram still, basically. So, what happened? Well, the car at the top of the hill apparently had just set off down, and hence the one at the bottom had just set off up. It had no choice because they're joined on a cable. But how do you power them? If both those vehicles are powered, how do they power equally? This is a question I don't know the answer to. Because the one going up has got to put on some power, the one going down has got to put on some power, because the one going down wouldn't have enough power to drag the other one up if it wasn't turning its wheels. So what appears to have happened, the one coming down had just set off from the top, the one going up had just set off from the bottom. But at that point, the cable where it attaches to the tram coming down, that cable broke. Now, as that cable broke, two things happened. Remember, that tram was basically powering down the hill. It's normally held back by the cable. Yeah? So that one was kind of, whether it was under power or whether it was just coasting and the one going up was providing the power, this is what I don't know, but I think they probably both provide the power. Now, apparently the coupling to the cable broke on the one that was coming down. The upshot of that is that the car that was going up fell backwards, because there's no way, even if it was under power going up, it's so steep, there is no way it will be able to go up without the cable. It would just slide backwards. That's what it did, and it hit the stops at the bottom of the hill. And some people were injured on that one, but I don't think any of them seriously, because it didn't fall back far. The one coming down, however, which may have been slightly under power anyway, then broke free. That one was then in free fall, and basically it was going too fast for the braking mechanisms that it had to work. There would also be some time where the driver had to think about what was happening to apply those brakes. So it panically applies the brakes, and the thing is moving, and it just basically keeps going, and the braking power is insufficient to stop it, basically. And why is it insufficient to stop it? Because when they electrified the line, they took out that rack and pinion rail, because they thought this clamp that clamps to the top of the conduit slot would be enough to hold a tram. And it probably would hold a tram if it was stationary, but because it was already going downhill and the cable broke as it was going downhill, then it was moving. When the cable broke, it would have suddenly gone a bit faster, and there was just no way they could stop it. Why did the cable break? Well, my thought is that the one going up may have somehow put a bit more of a hold back force on it for some reason. Maybe the driver on the one going up touched the air brakes or something, and then that sudden holding back of the cable broke it free from the other one that was coming down. It came down the hill at around about 35 miles an hour, we think, which is far faster than they normally travel. They're also a bit of a weird, because of the oddball shape of them, they're also a bit of a weird kind of top-heavy thing. So when it got to the corner, it derailed on the corner, fell over sideways, and I'm surprised, given that the things are all steel, because I initially thought they were wooden, but apparently they were steel. I was surprised at how much of the bodywork of the vehicle had just disintegrated. So I'm really not sure why it disintegrated in the way it did, but that's obviously why so many people died, because the vehicle just disintegrated around them. So that is basically what happened. It was the tram coming down that broke free of the cable, and that's why when you've seen it on the news, there's the one crashed on the corner and there's another one at the bottom, because you think, well, if one's at the bottom, the one at the top shouldn't have been moving, so did it break away while it was at the top station? No, they'd set off and the one at the bottom fell back a little bit. That's all the information that I've managed to glean from various sources, but nobody's actually quite told the complete story about it. In a few weeks' time, there has already been a preliminary report on what happened. There will be another report in a few weeks' time. So if you're interested in more details, keep an eye out for that. Right. I will have a little look what we're getting to in the chat. Of course, the Great Orme Tramway, that is another funicular, basically, the Great Orme Tramway. Dominic says the view from the Great Orme was great, but very windy. Not sure why there were trolley poles on the trams, since they're both cable hauled. It was for the telephone, Dominic. Originally, you see, the trams are cable hauled, but they are cable hauled by one drum, right? So the cables for each tram, on the bottom section at least, are on one drum, but they are wrapped the opposite way around the drum. So when one winds in, the other one's winding out, because it's wrapped the other way around the drum. And the trams are permanently attached to the cable, so if they need to slow down, speed up, stop, whatever, that is basically controlled by the brakeman in the winding house. But there is a driver, for want of a better word for him, standing on the front of each tram, in communication with the winding house, saying, yeah, it's clear, we can go a bit faster, or there's a car coming up the street, we need to slow down, or we need to stop. And that driver is in basically constant communication. Now, originally that communication was done by an old-fashioned telephone, and that's why it had overhead wires. It originally had a full overhead wire system. That's why the trams have got trolley poles. It was for the telephone communication, nothing to do with powering the vehicles. When they were refurbished in, I think it was sometime in the 90s, as a cost-cutting thing, they basically took down a lot of the overhead. They only left it up in places where it was part of the historic street scene. So they left the overhead in place in places where sort of it was an important part of the historic street scene. You know, almost like listed structure sort of thing. But most of the overhead they took down, so the trolley poles are now just there for show, basically. Again, they've just left them on for show, but they don't actually use them anymore. It's all done now with UHF radio, the communications, but that is what they were originally for. It was originally it was a sort of wind-up telephone, a little wooden telephone. I do remember them using them. I've been on it when it was controlled by the guy with the telephone. So that's what it was there for. Christopher says, my living room table is covered in telephones. Yeah. When every surface in your house is covered in them, Christopher, that's when you have to start worrying. Dominic says, I did get a little worried remembering about the Lisbon tram as I went up. Yeah, the Great Orme did have a runaway years ago. If you look at the numbers on the trams on the Great Orme, they don't follow on. They're not 1, 2, 3 and 4. They're something like 1, 2, 5 and 6, and you think, well, where's 3 and 4? Well, they were trailers, and one of them broke away because stupidly they used to pull the trailers up the hill. Now, that's not the way to do it, really. It's much more sensible to push your trailer up the hill, or if you're a train, push your carriages up the hill, as they do on the Snowdon Mountain Railway. They push the coach up. In fact, on Snowdon the coaches are not connected to the locomotives because they once had a accident where I think a loco derailed and it dragged the coach off with it, and so now they're not connected anymore, so that if a loco does come off the track, it doesn't take the coach with it. So what they should have done on the Great Orme was push the trailer up the hill and then pulled it down so the tram was acting as a brake on the trailer, but they didn't, and there was a big accident on the Great Orme in the early part of the 20th century, I think it was, and that's why the numbers don't follow on, why it's not cars 1, 2, 3 and 4 on there. But they do have different braking systems on the Great Orme, as do most of the funiculars in the UK. They have different ways of stopping them. And I think the Great Orme, I think they have like a wedge that gets rammed into the slot on the Great Orme, and which is what they use for emergency stops. If they have to do an emergency stop, the trouble is, then you have trouble getting the wedge out again to get the car moving again. You have to get the fitters out, and they have to come and manually sort of disengage the tram from the track, sort of thing. Dominic says in Lisbon there's been several accidents in the past decade. Not a great safety record, it seems. Yeah, well, what you have to remember, Dominic, is when you've got a vehicle that's travelling all day, every day, law of averages say occasionally there's going to be an accident. It's just like when you go out and drive your car. You go and drive your car all day, every day, you are far more likely at some stage to have an accident than somebody who only drives their car for 10 minutes once a week to go to the local shops. And that's the thing about it. But then, of course, the news get hold of it, and then they have one accident, the news gets hold of it, and then if there is another accident, then that probably wouldn't have been newsworthy. It suddenly becomes newsworthy because all of a sudden the news is interested for about 10 minutes and then they move on to something else. Spoon Tricks is with us. Hiya, Spoony. He says, I've got telephones filling the top shelf of my wardrobe and on the drawers as well. He says, thanks for the explanation about the tram crash, Andy. Yeah, I thought people here would probably want to know, and I've not found anywhere that's fully explained it, and I didn't quite know how they worked. I always wondered about why they got two pantographs on the roof, and I never quite understood how they worked, and I didn't realise they actually got motors in the cars themselves. It seems a strange way of doing it to me, that, but that's what they did. Christopher says the W-class trams he's been riding on only run on Route 35, only the City Circle route now in Melbourne, and it's a free tram service. Excellent, because W-cars used to be everywhere. I think Melbourne's one of those places that's probably not as good as it used to be. If you'd visited Melbourne about 30 years ago and went back now, I think it's a bit like visiting Blackpool 30 years ago and going back now. You'd go back and throw your hands up in horror and go, what have they done to it? Yeah. Yes. So that's what happened in Lisbon anyway. The good news is the word from Caris is that they are going to rebuild and restore that funicular. There will be some new safety systems on it, but basically it will hopefully look the same as it did. Maybe just with slightly different emergency braking systems. Always seems to me that 2 cables would be a good idea. 2 cables round the drum seems to me would be a good idea. But what worries me about them, in fact it worries me about all funiculars really, is that the vehicles on them can never go to a depot for maintenance, because they're permanently attached to the cable, and they've got nowhere to go. I know things like the Great Orme have got a bit of a shed at the top that they can put a Vatel in and an undercover thing at the bottom. But some of these little funiculars haven't got much at either end. You think, well, how do they do the maintenance? And I think some of the ones in Scarborough, I think they took the cars off to maintain them. You actually physically craned them off, put them on the back of a lorry and took them somewhere. When they've been upgrading that over the years, because were there 3 in Scarborough? I think there's 1 less now because they sold it to somewhere else, but I think there were originally 3 in Scarborough. Yeah, but I quite like a good funicular. I've been on the one at Linton and Lynmouth. It's one of my favourite ways to travel. The views on the Linton and Lynmouth one, because that is a genuine water balance, the one at Linton and Lynmouth. That one's just brilliant. If you get a chance to go, do go and have a look at it. Christopher says, right now in Melbourne, Yarra Tram are withdrawing the 1970s Z3 class. That's a shame, isn't it? You've got like 50 years old and they're now withdrawing them. Yeah. I don't like these modern trams. I don't like these modern plastic caterpillar things. Really, really don't like them. And that. And their safety record is terrible. Look at Sheffield's tram trains. One was involved in a collision on the first day in service, and another one had a very similar collision in almost the same place just a few weeks later. So yeah, if you want to talk about dodgy safety records, modern tramways are appalling for the safety records. Absolutely appalling, but you just don't hear about it. But I've lost count of the number of times the Manchester Metrolink have hit cars and stuff like that. Completely lost count. And it happens on all of them as well. So yeah, modern trams are no safer. And when a modern tram derails, it derails spectacularly, normally, because of the way they're designed. They're not designed as a rigid chassis with bogies like a railway carriage. They are effectively 3 4-wheel trams bolted together, generally. The ones in Sheffield aren't. The ones in Sheffield do have bogies, but the more modern ones, like the ones in Blackpool for instance, the Purple Peril in Blackpool, they are actually 4-wheelers. It's 3 4-wheelers joined together by 2 sections that are basically just covered tow bars. And you think, well, if the short wheelbase 4-wheel tram is just joined together by 2 bits that haven't got any wheels at all, the ride will be appalling on them, and yeah, it is. Yeah. Dominic says, I remember going on the Manx Electric Railway and it hit a Mini. The driver got out, shrugged, and we carried on. Yeah, I was on a Blackpool Bloom car that did a similar thing coming out of Fleetwood, somewhere around Thornton Gate area. a car decided to cross in front of it at one of the places where there's like a road crossing. No signals or anything to control it. The car decided it was going to nip in front of this Bloom car and didn't quite make it across the track. And the Bloom car sort of clipped the back end of the motor car, spun the motor car round in the road, made a right mess of the motor car, and the Bloom car, I think it had a broken front lifeguard, and that was about it. And that just carried on to Blackpool. Think because they got a broken lifeguard, I think it then did come out of service once it got to Blackpool, because it had to go there to get to the depot anyway, so they just let us stay on it. As far as Central Prom. Yarra Trams are giving some of the Z3 trams to the Ballarat Heritage Tramway. Well, that's good. That's excellent. Dominic says he thinks it was a tunnel car that it was on at the Mini, which are very solidly made. They're all very solidly made. The thing that's not solidly made about Dominic is the bodywork being wood. If they turn over, you're in big trouble. But if they just hit things, they tend to hit things with the metal underframe, and the metal underframe is built like a tank. So unless they turn over, they're very safe. If they turn over, though, they completely disintegrate, as we've seen in Lisbon. Yeah, and as we saw, of course, on Snaefell a few years ago, when one of their cars on the Snaefell Mountain Railway ran away at the bungalow. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, you see, you only hear about when they go wrong, but when you think about how many hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of miles that they travel safely, and then there's one incident and you suddenly hear about it. So what you have to remember is all the days and months and years that you've not heard about it, and then you get a true idea of the safety record. Dominic said the Royal trailer was in service when he was on the island. I didn't know they had a Royal trailer. Is it not just a trailer? Surely they've not got a special one just for royalty. Royalty so infrequently go there. Yeah. Dominic says, I'd love to go back to the Isle of Man, but the ferry prices are ridiculous, especially for cars. You do what the bloke did in the lockdown and go across on a jet ski. Yeah. I think it's a lot cheaper, I think, if you go across on foot. If you go across as a foot passenger, I think it's a lot cheaper. But yeah, I've never been to the Isle of Man. I would quite like to go to the Isle of Man. I get as far as Blackpool, and I think, well, I can see it over there, but I've never actually got there. But yeah, it would be quite good to go to the Isle of Man. Quite like to do that trip. Like the land that time forgot. £250 to £300, I think, said Dominic. What? To take your car across, or to go? Surely it's not that to go on foot. Surely to God, that's crazy money. You could almost like go to New York for that on a cut price ticket. Mad. Anyway, that's all what's been happening in tramway world this week. And like I say, it's all stuff for all the wrong reasons this week in the world of tramways. Apparently they are getting ready in Blackpool to let 2 heritage cars back into service, a balloon car and the frigate. Apparently are going to be back in service in time for Lightpool. So they're telling me they've had to fit them, right, wait for this, they've had to fit them with anti-speeding technology. Yeah. I don't understand all this automation, this anti-speed technology and that. You know, when something's been perfectly okay for like the last 140 years, why is it suddenly now not okay anymore? We've got to withdraw them all immediately until we fit this anti-speed technology to them. You know, it's been totally fine for the last 140 years. What's happened overnight that it's not fine anymore? Really don't get it. But yeah, yes, it's odd, isn't it? It is odd. Folks were talking about telephones earlier. I've got a little telephone tale for you. I can. I want to find some things out of a big stack of things now that you're probably all going to fall down as I do it, so just bear with me a minute. Does anybody remember this? It's going back a while. There. This is a thing that was made in the UK for telephone rentals, amongst others, and it was basically a weird modernised telephone that the GPO never took on, sort of thing. But it was sold privately. I got this one a while back. This one arrived quite some time ago. So I'll put it there on this incredibly messy desk. So that's the one that arrived some time ago, but this week that one's arrived as well. Right, I'll put it all the way around because you've seen that one before. So this week this one's arrived. And is it my eyesight or is it a different colour? This one looks more sort of buff coloured, and this one looks sort of dirty pond water green colour. This one's not a telephone rentals one. This one is these guys, CS. Now I've forgotten just off the top of my head what that stands for. Somebody I'm sure will tell me. But this one's not very good. It's kind of held together with sellotape at the back there, because there's two little chunks out of it here where there should be two little clips to hold the case on, and at the front here it's got some cracks on this corner here, so it's not in such good nick, this one. But they turn up so infrequently, these, that I thought it was worthwhile just grabbing it as a comparison. So we now have two of them, but this one has got various problems with its dial. It is a standard GPO dial 21. So it feels like the spring has broke in it. So that will need taking apart and a spring sorting out for it. So that's what has arrived this week. Just thought I would show you those. So we now have two of them, because we did only have one. But I couldn't believe it when another one turned up, because they don't turn up very often. And I just saw it and thought, oh, I know what that is. And people don't show much interest in them either. And I think the reason people don't show much interest in them is because they don't realise what they are. I think they think they're like some sort of Russian phone or something. They don't realise they're actually British. And so, but because that's what I thought for a long time. But then, if you were watching, a few months ago now, isn't it? We actually did do a bit of a deep dive into them and what they are and how they came about and that. And basically, it's just a very cheap way of making a telephone. They wanted to basically make a telephone as cheaply as they could, and that is what they came up with to do it. Dominic says, is that the really weird private phone? Yes, it is, Dominic. It's another one of them. I want to do a video about them actually, where I take them apart and that, because I'm sure nobody else has covered it. But yeah, watch this space. When they make 26 hours in a day and 9 days in a week, I might actually have time to do it. So yeah. But so yeah, that's the only telephone related thing that's happened really this week. Apart from that, it's been quite boring. What I have been doing this week, I have been getting the radio station a bit more ready to go on air. We've been having trouble with the software that runs the play out this week. Basically, there's a new version of the software, which means the old version of the software that we use is not supported anymore, and you can't download it anymore, and you can't install it anymore, because it's been superseded by a new version. That would be fine if the new version worked, which it doesn't. The new version has got more bugs than a terrible hotel in Blackpool. It's unbelievably buggy, the new version, what they call Rivendell 4. So we're trying to stick with Rivendell 3, which you can't download anymore. So how do you put it on a new computer? Well, we're resorting to disk cloning, which is a thing unto itself. So I'm having a quick, well, it's not actually terribly quick, but a crash course in disk cloning this week to try and save the Rivendell version 3 system, because the version 4 is rubbish. So yeah, that's what we've been up to this week, and yeah, hopefully it'll all work. If we're lucky, but yeah, what is everybody up to on here? The chat's been moving at about 1 million miles a minute again. Remember, as always, also that if you want to support the show, if you're enjoying watching these and that, and you do want to support us, we get less and less revenue from YouTube with every week that passes. So if you want to support us, best way to do it is by going on here, https buymeacoffee.com/Andy Shed, and you can just donate a couple of quid there. I don't actually spend it all on coffee, some of it, but not all of it. So there you go. Yeah, right, where are we? How are we getting on? Spoon Trick says, that's why I never run to update software. I usually wait at least 6 weeks before I update something. This Rivendell 4, Spoon Tricks, it's been out years. It's been out 2 or 3 years, maybe longer, for beta testing, and it's always had a load of bugs in it, and they fix a load of bugs, but then in the fix generate a load more. It's really, really not good. Why did they not just stick with Rivendell 3? I don't get it. I really don't understand why they didn't just stick with Rivendell 3. You know, there's an old saying, isn't there? If it ain't broke, don't mend it. But yeah, don't update. I always try and turn automatic updates and things off, because they always break things. Always. Automatic updates always break stuff. Yeah, so if anybody's got a version 3 point something, is it 3.19 or something, the latest version of Rivendell, before they went to version 4, I want the very latest version of version 3 before they moved on to Rivendell 4. If anybody happens to have that anywhere as a download or anything, please do get in touch, because it will be useful. Spoon Trick says that's shocking, especially if it's some sort of commercial software. It sort of is and it's sort of not. What it is, it's free software, but then you buy the support for it if you want to. So it's a company called Paravel Systems in America that supplies it. It's all open source and that, the software is. It's very much in the sort of ethics of the Linux world, and it runs on Linux. And what I'm wondering is, if Paravel have deliberately put bugs into version 4 because not enough people were buying their support packages. They were just using the software without buying the support packages, which Paravel say it's totally okay to do, but I wonder if you buy a Paravel support package, if they can magically fix all these bugs, but the support packages are not cheap. So, yeah. Christopher says Ericsson made a lot of weird telephones, like the N1970B telephone. What don't come up all the time. And I have 3 N1970Bs, but they're rare to see. Yeah, they made all sorts of things. I mean, I'm sure there's things that I've still not seen that have been made over the years that will pop up one day. People do pop up with stuff every now and again, prototypes and weird things. The one that gets me is the 1977 Jubilee trim phones. Every time I see one of those for sale, it says on it something like, unique phone, never put into production, this was a prototype, it's worth a lot of money. And I think, well, if that's a prototype, it's damn funny because it's about the 20th one I've seen. Yeah, and we think now those Silver Jubilee trim phones, we think there were probably about 50 or 60 of them. We think, not sure, but we think. Yeah, so don't get hooked in for a lot of money for a Jubilee trim phone. Dominic says, I wonder which company supplied the telephones to Great Orme, maybe one of the bigger suppliers to the GPO. When the Great Orme tramway was built, I don't think the GPO existed, because it was back in the 1800s, wasn't it? They were sort of wind-up boxes. They were not dissimilar to that. Yeah, they were not dissimilar to that, and they were sort of mounted on the bulkhead of the tram, if I remember right, sort of behind the driver's head, so you had to turn around and not look where he was going to speak into them. Yeah, but they were something similar to that, if I'm remembering right. It's a long time ago. It's a long time that they altered them. I know the people at Crouch were involved. There was a guy at Crouch called Bob Hall who looked after the overhead line and things at Crouch, and he was involved with the Great Orme when they were consulting on what they should do, and that about the overhead, where they should take it down and that. And I think it was partially Bob's idea that they had radios, and got rid of the telephone system and just left the wires up where they needed it to look pretty, sort of thing. And that is what they did in the end. But yeah, always cold on the Great Orme, always cold. Have you ever noticed how the trams on the top don't have windows in? That's what gets me. The ones on the bottom section have got windows in. The ones on the top section, which are the ones that need windows in, I haven't got windows in. Wind just blows straight through them. And I wonder if it is because the wind would literally blow the glass out if they did put windows in them. Because it does get incredibly windy up there. Incredibly windy. But yeah, I've been up a few times. I've not actually travelled on it for a long time. I think the last time I went there, it wasn't in service because it had some flash floods and it had washed all the ballast out from under the tracks. So I was walking up the tramway and I was walking on the sleepers, and underneath me was like big drops because it had washed all the ground away underneath the track, and I was just walking on the track on the sleepers, which probably wasn't a very good idea because they only held on to the sleepers were only held up by the nails that were attaching on to the to the actual steel track, and I was just walking on the sleepers to get up the arm. Yeah, a fantastic power of water coming down there to wash all that ballast away. I've got a nail somewhere. I've got a track spike nail somewhere that I picked up because they were just everywhere in the street. They just washed them all out, and I thought, oh, that'd make a good souvenir. So I've got a track spike from the Great Orme somewhere. Because they were just sort of big nails. It was flat bottom rail, and it just big nails nailed it straight down onto wooden sleepers. No chairs or anything like that on it. Yeah, brilliant though, brilliant system, brilliant system. I wonder what they do with the cable when they change the cable. That's what. Where was it? Somewhere cut the cable up into like lengths about that long and then sold it all as souvenirs. Where was it where they did that? I can't remember. But if you know where to look, the cable from the Matlock Bank cable tramway apparently is still around somewhere in Matlock, being used as a handrail up a steep footpath somewhere. But I don't know exactly where it is. There's an Esler street lamp as well somewhere in Matlock. Need to go and find that. Again, when I get time. But I have no idea who supplied the telephones to Great Orme, but it will be a very early manufacturer, because it's yonks ago that they started in service. Yeah. Right. Okie dokie. I'm still not sure what these crown things do, by the way. I have had an email that I didn't entirely understand from YouTube about these crowns. Apparently you can hype a video or something, and if you hype it, it gets more views or goes up a leaderboard or something. So if any of you with these little crown things know how to hype this video, please go ahead. Let's see what it does. Yeah. Where's everybody gone tonight? See, I'm only getting things from like Christopher and Dominic and Spoon Tricks now. There were other people here earlier. It's odd. I have to wonder if this chat is working right or not. I don't have a massive amount of faith in it, if I'm honest with you. But yeah, so that is what has been happening and stuff. So we've still got a load of telephones and things to repair and fix and maintain, including some I've still got to do Fungy Fips. If you're watching this, Fungy Fips, I've not forgotten about your phones. I have still got them, and I'm gradually working my way through them. But I just keep getting distracted by stuff. Dominic says, I've just seen a trim phone turned into a lamp. Yeah, I think I've seen that, Dominic, this week. Yeah. I don't know why people turn telephones into lamps. Why do people turn things into lamps that are not lamps to start with? You know, is there like a world shortage of lamps? No, I don't think there is. I don't think you need to be turning other things into lamps, because lamps are so hard to get. If you want a lamp, you know, like, go to Home Base or somewhere, buy a bloody lamp, for God's sake. Why would you buy a telephone if you want a lamp? It's a bit like buying a bed when you need a saucepan. You know, both are useful, but when you want one, the other's no good at all. Christopher says he's going on holiday for 6 days in Albury for the Heritage Diesel Train in October. Cool, very good. Excellent. You get about a bit, Christopher, don't you? Gets about a bit. Yeah. Yeah. Why do people just turn things into lamps? Spoon Trick says these conversions were maybe hip and trendy 15 years ago, but I really don't know why people pursue it now. Yeah, but I don't think they ever were hip and trendy. What is the point of turning something into a lamp that is not a lamp? I don't get it. Why don't you just go and buy a nice lamp? If you go to an antique shop or something, you can get a really nice lamp. You know, go buy a Tiffany lamp or something like that. You know, some nice ones in almost every antique shop in the land. Why do you have to turn something into a lamp that isn't a lamp? I've seen it done with petrol cans and jerry cans and telephones, and the worst one I've seen was on that stupid Money for Nothing programme on the television, and they did it with a vice, a massive great big vice, you know, like a bench vice. Well, have you ever tried to pick up a bench vice, a big one, like a big record vice? They're impossible to pick up. That stupid woman on Money for Nothing got this massive bench vice. I know, we'll turn it into a wall light. Well, how are you going to fix that to the wall without pulling the wall down? Honestly, I've got no idea. Joe says, I'm still here, I'm just multitasking. My brother said many thanks for voting for him, and he will get in touch with you at some stage about the radio station, but at the moment he is too busy. Now, Jonah's brother is stood in the local council elections around here. He's a member of the Homeland Party, which is standing on the ticket of Stop Building Houses on Fields, you muppets. Because we need the fields to feed the people that you keep bringing into the bloody country that you're going to put in the houses. But we're not going to be able to feed them if you built the house on the field, are we? So yes, basically the Homeland Party says, stop building houses on fields. So, on that alone, I voted for them. Because I thought, that's a fair thing. They're building thousands of houses behind me here. They've not upgraded the drains, they've not upgraded the water supply. We get a trickle of water out of the tap now. You know, you get more water by digging a hole in the middle of the Sahara Desert than you do here now. They've not built any shops, they've not built any hospitals, they've not thought about any transport links, because they've made all the roads so little and windy you can't get a bus down them. And they've built thousands and thousands of houses with nowhere for anybody to work, nowhere for anybody to go to school, no hospitals, no doctors, no shops, no nothing. Just thousands and thousands and thousands of houses all built on top of one another that nobody wants. And the houses are truly shit as well. If you are thinking of buying a new built house in Bolsover, honestly, don't. They are rubbish. And that's why people are buying them, moving into them and moving out again less than 6 months later. In fact, I can show you a housing estate where people have bought the houses, are now selling the houses again, and they've been there such a short length of time, the houses across the road aren't built yet. That is how quickly people are trying to offload these houses that are being built everywhere. Because they're crap. Christopher says, no, I'm not going on holiday in October, I'm going this week on the 18th. Oh, excellent. Dominic says, it really irked me when I saw a really nice and original Concorde Blue 706 at a store in Bury St Edmunds turned into a lamp, ruined. I almost went up to the store. I did once. There was somebody at Kelham Island Museum in Sheffield one Christmas who'd got a stall with all these telephone lamp things, and somebody said you should go down there. There's a store with a load of telephones on down there, been turned into lamps. So I went down the far end of the site, and there was this very dejected looking bloke sat behind this stall who'd obviously not sold any. And I picked up one of these phones that had been turned into a lamp. It got about 150 quid price ticket on it, and he said, are you interested in these? He said, are you interested in a telephone lamp, sir? I said, well, no, not really. I said. He said, oh, right, what? He said they're very nice. I said, yeah, I know all about telephones. I said, I restore telephones and stuff. I said, but these are no good because somebody's cut holes in them and turned them into lamps. And he got quite upset then. And he said, well, it adds value to them. I said, no, it doesn't. I said, because if that had been a telephone, because it was like a 150 a candlestick, so if that had been a telephone, I'd have given you 80 quid for it now. I said, but you've turned it into a lamp, and now it's worth about a tenner. They said, well, I've got 150 quid on it. So I don't care if you've got £1 million on it, it's still only worth a tenner, and that's why you've not sold any all weekend. So he was not a happy bunny when he heard some home truths, but do I care? Do I care what people think? No. So when you see one turned into a lamp, what you should do is go up to them and offer them a fiver for it, and say you'd give them a tenner if it were a telephone, but as you turn it into a lamp, it's only worth a fiver because I've got to buy parts to turn it back. It's like these people that paint furniture. You know, these really talentless people that paint furniture with emulsion, then they rub it all off the corners and say, oh, it's shabby chic. Yeah. I spend all my life buying furniture like that for next to nothing, taking all the finish off it and repolishing it. Dominic says, Starmer might be gone soon. Bloody hell, I hope so, Dominic. Yeah. What makes you think Starmer might be gone soon? Can't get that lucky, surely to God. It's not just Starmer want gone, it's the entirety of the Labour Party who want gone. You ought to cram them all into one of Elon Musk's rockets, preferably a Mark II Starship, because they're the ones that blow up most, and just launch them. Joe says, people like to upcycle, Andy. Yeah, but it's not always upcycling, is it? It's generally downcycling, because you take an antique item that's worth something, and then you ruin it by upcycling it. So no, just buy the antique item, just sit on it for a few years, and then sell it again, and you'll make some money on it if you bought the right thing to start with. Joe says it's the same here with houses. They keep building houses in Wingleworth and Claycross. Apparently they should have built a new school at the Avenue and didn't. Oh, surprise, surprise. Spoontrick says here in Leeds they are building houses non-stop, and that's in Leeds, and nobody wants to live in Leeds. And then they are converting offices and shopping centres into student apartments and building flats. The hospitals are the same size they were years ago. Yeah. What about the storage beds as well? What about the storage farms and the reservoirs for your drinking water and all that? Are they growing in size as well? No, they're blooming not, are they? Spoon Trick says, yes, that awful shabby chic trend ruined so much stuff. Well, it didn't totally ruin it, because you can always take it off and refinish it. Yeah, I taught somebody how to do French polishing a few weeks ago, and now he's off putting right all the wrongs done by people that follow that god-awful program on the television. Gambo says, hello, last message didn't send. Hello, Gambo. Nice to see you here again. Better late than never, Gambo. Yeah, the whole upcycling thing, I don't really think... why upcycle it? Why not use it for what it was used for originally? That's what I don't get. That's what I don't get. You know, you get somebody who finds a wine bottle and cuts the top off and turns it into a drinking glass, yeah, and then goes out and buys a wine bottle. Well, you had a wine bottle, you cut the top off it and turned it into a drinking glass. Why didn't you just leave that as a wine bottle and go out and buy a drinking glass and save yourself the work? Joe says, hopefully you'll become Prime Minister soon, Andy. If I become Prime Minister, I'm just going to invite Vladimir Putin over and tell him to run it. Yeah. Because he seems to be one of the few people that's getting it right at the minute, doesn't he? I just wait for a response to that. Spoon Trick says, I think these ideas of upcycling are marketed towards bored and talentless people. Yeah, I think you're right, Spoon Tricks. I think they're marketed towards pretty but useless wives whose husband is out at work, and they are basically sat at home watching TV all day, wanting something to do, but because they spent all their school days sort of not paying much attention in school, they've got all the talent of a cardboard box. So it has to be something really, really simple for them to do, and they can't throw a bit of paint at a mid-20th century piece of furniture. Not even the right sort of paint either. That's why now paint now has idiot labels on it. Have you noticed the idiot labels on paint now? You know, you used to get paint, it used to say undercoat, it used to say primer for wood, primer for metal, gloss and emulsion, right? Doesn't say primer, gloss, undercoat, emulsion now. It says like radiator paint, wall paint, door paint, floor paint, because people are too thick to know which sort of paint you put on what item. Wilco started that. Gambo says, it boils my pee when I see those stupid telephone lamps, unless it's a replica old style lamp. Somebody on here once said it'd be a fun project to get a lamp and turn it into a telephone. Always wondered how you might do that. Oh, Christopher's off on his travels. They're going by train to Albury, New South Wales, from Melbourne, which is about a 5-hour ride on V-Line. Their rubbish new DMUs. Ugh. Gambo said, I've been watching, just not said anything. Ah, there you go. The silent majority, whatever. Yeah. Yes. Dominic, what makes you think we might be getting rid of Starmer soon? I want to know. You've given me a glimmer of hope now. I've seen a really, really funny music video on YouTube about Starmer. It's a very funny rock music video, really, really good. Yeah. What makes you think he's going? He'll not go. You won't get rid of Starmer in the same way that you can't get rid of dog poo off the sole of your shoe once you've stepped in it. What is the difference between dog poo and Keir Starmer? Well, eventually dog poo stops being smelly. Joe says the upcycling gang are likely the type who are tree huggers and want cycle lanes everywhere. Yeah, probably. Dominic says there's Labour MPs plotting to get rid of Starmer apparently. Yeah, but then we're going to get another Labour MP then, aren't we? It's a bit like saying let's get rid of this wasp and replace it with a crocodile. You know, neither are anything you want anywhere near you, really, are they? No, want to get rid of the whole lot. Just get rid of the Labour Party. Just bin the Labour Party. Bonfire night is coming up soon, and now we're putting flags up everywhere. Raise the colours. I think what we should do next is we should stop calling it Bonfire Night and start calling it by what its proper title is, Guy Fawkes Night, and let's start celebrating Guy Fawkes, the only honest person ever to go anywhere near Parliament. And instead of putting Guy Fawkes on top of the bonfire, let's celebrate Guy Fawkes and put effigies of Keir Starmer on top of the bonfire. Yeah, I think that would be an excellent idea. Then I think we should all get traffic cones, paint them white, cut 2 holes in them, put them on his heads, and dance around the bonfire. Think about it. I'm really trying to upset the leftists tonight. I'm really trying my best to upset the leftists. Yeah, Christopher says real ain't what it used to be. Yeah, nothing's what it used to be, is it? This is why Doctor Who gets it wrong. If I could time travel, if you gave me a TARDIS and I could time travel, I'd go back in time about 60 or 70 years. And I'd go to a gynecologist and say, look, this is what's going to happen if you let them breed. Yeah. I was watching Countryfile before I came on here tonight, and they're on about Cornwall, and they said there's no children in Cornwall anymore. I thought, bloody hell, let's move to Cornwall. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I think you should divide the country up. Yeah, and they should have child-free counties in the country. Yeah, totally child-free county. Yeah, bloody hell, I'd go there. Yeah, child-free county. Yeah. Then we should have left-wing free counties. Yeah. divide it up, divide the country up, build big walls between all these different areas. Nobody goes in or out, and let's see which ones survive and which ones make a total hash of existence, and they all sort of die of starvation because they can't look after themselves and stuff. I wonder which ones would survive. I've been trying to get my TV show commissioned this week. My TV show where we get a street of houses, move loads of people into all these houses down this street, then turn the power off for 12 months. And see them live without electricity for 12 months. It would be the best television show ever. Really, really simple. Just get a street, you know, like they do with Brookside. Just bought the entire street. Move loads of people into this street. Say, right, we're going to film you for the next 12 months. We're not going to tell you what's going to happen. We're just going to film you for the next 12 months. Okay, that's fine. Then go click and just turn all the power off. And see how they cope with it. I think it'd be an awesome TV programme that I would love to see that. I would love to see it. Christopher said the V-Line trains were awesome back in the 1980s. Now in 2025, V-Line is rubbish. Yeah, it's the same here. It's the same here. Here, they're building a multi-billion-pound railway line so you can get to London 20 minutes faster than you can at the minute.
Yes. To go from here to London takes 2 hours on the train. It'll take 1 hour 40 minutes when High Speed 2 opens. Or you can go in a car and do it in an hour and a half. Yeah, right. And don't even get me started on the back tunnel, which is a lot less cool than it sounds. It's nothing to do with Batman. Google it if you don't know about it. You'll be amazed. You will be amazed. Yes. Yeah, I think everybody wants to go to London. Why would we want to go to London? Why? With that idiot mayor they've got down there. You know, you just wouldn't go there, would you? Just wouldn't do. I used to go to London a lot. When Boris was in charge, I used to go to London a lot. But now they've got that left-wing Labour camera-wielding muppet. I even forgot what his name is. But, yeah, dear God. Well, you can't go to London anymore because he charge you for going there. So I just say, right, up yours then, London. I can do without you. Let all your businesses fail. Yeah, so we don't go there anymore. We don't do London anymore. Nope. Don't do any of these places where you have to pay to go to, you know, where you have to, what they call them, clean air zones. It's a clean air zone up to the ring road. But then the clean air zone also takes in the ring road, just so you can't like go around it. Sneaky. Khan. Dominic, yeah, that's his name, ain't Dominic? Khan. Yeah. Named after an awful Star Trek villain. Yeah, Sadiq Khan. Proof that you can exist with a monomolecular brain. Dominic says there's a great cover of Gary Newman's Cars about Khan on YouTube. Is there? There was a brilliant one about Starmer. Absolutely brilliant rock track about Starmer, all done with AI. Really superbly good. It it like really went for it to upset every loony lefty possible. It really did, in every way, shape and form. It was to wind the loony lefties up, and it was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Gambo says, I'm going to be doing a clear out of my many spare bits of telephone bits, so Fleabay will be busy soon. No, it won't, because they charge so much now, Fleabay, that nobody's buying off there anymore. Because when you sell something for £10 on Fleabay, what you don't see, and you don't actually see this, is when somebody's viewed that item to buy it, it's 12 quid. So you list something at £9.99 thinking I'll sell it for £9.99. The buyer actually sees like £11.50 or something like that. Which is why my sales, well, are just non-existent now. And I was selling saying those little kits that I do quite frequently, but I've sold one, I think, now in about the last 3 months. Absolutely useless, Fleabay. Yeah, it's really not the thing. What you're listening anyway, Gambo? You might be able to sell it on here without going via Fleabay. You never know. Don't give Fleabay the profits. List it on eBuyGum, eBuyGum.co.uk or .com or whatever it is, because I don't think you get charged for listing on there. Yes, Fleabay has gone crap. It really has. They got too greedy, like everybody else. They got too greedy. That is the problem in the modern world. Everybody is far too greedy. That's something else that are on Country File. There was somebody, a researcher for the Archers radio programme, who apparently her job is to go around farms looking for stories to turn into fictionalised stories for the Archers. And she went to this woman running this farm, and this woman says when she works it out, she's actually on about £1 an hour. And this woman from the BBC said, "Why do you do it for £1 an hour?" And this woman said, "Well, it's just part of my heritage. If I'd have been her, I'd have said, well, we're not all greedy cows like some." Yes, I think they should abolish the minimum wage, and what they should have is a maximum wage, and the maximum wage should be what the minimum wage is now. It should be £12 an hour. Nobody should be able to earn more than £12 an hour. Get the useless buggers back to work. I've been working on, this is Christopher. He says, I've been working on my GPO 746L phone because the RJ11 line cord on the end of the GPO junction box stopped working, but I have the phone working now on my phone line. Very good. Christopher, you want to come over here and get a job as an open reach engineer? Because like 3 weeks ago they were shown a telephone pole across the road from me that is gradually doing that, and it's getting more and more and more like that, and it's going that way, and it just keeps going that way. And they were told about it 3 weeks ago for about the 6th time, and it's still going that way, and they've still done nothing about it. And why is it going that way in the first place? Because they put the telephone pole in straight up, then they hang all the wires to all the houses over here, all off the same side of the telephone pole, because there aren't any houses over this side, they're all on this side, you see. So they hang all the wires off this way, and then they wonder why the bloody pole starts to lean this way. Well, what they should have done, they should have put it in, leaning back a bit, so that when they hung all the wires off, it pulled it straight. You don't have to be a genius to work it out, but, well, you ain't got any geniuses at Openreach, have they? I'd like to know what sort of training course an Openreach engineer goes on, because I think it might be a day out at Twycross Zoo to look at the monkeys. But yes, they are not engineers like GPO engineers used to be engineers. Definitely not. These Openreach people. Tell you what they did manage to do though. They did manage to reset my router and lose all the port forwarding settings out of it. So I've got like security cameras that still don't work now because they buggered up all the port forwarding in the router. You've got a fault. Yes, it's a fault on the phone line. Just let me have a look at your router. What do you want to try and look at my router for? I'm just resetting it. Don't do that! Oh, sorry, too late, I've reset it. What you done that for? Well, I think it might be a router that's causing the problem. It's not my router that's causing the problem. It's your cables. Get out there and go and look at your cables. 3 hours later, it comes back and goes, I found a cable duct full of water across the road. See, wasn't my bloody router, it was your cable duct, which is what I said in the first place. You've plugged about £10,000 worth of bloody computer and technical gadgetry into a phone line to do what I've bloody told you like 3 hours ago. If you'd just gone and took the lid off that manhole 3 hours ago, you'd have saved 2.5 hours in time and my router would still be okay. Thanks very much. Well done, you qualified muppet from Openreach. I'm just not letting them in again. Next time an Openreach engineer comes to the door, I'm going to do the same as I do with TV licensing. Openreach engineers, the only people that make Jehovah's Witnesses look positively welcome. Gambo says, I'm selling all sorts of telephone bits, handsets, mics, earpieces, dials, covers and bases, cords. I have items that have been stored away for the last 4 years or more, plus my shed's filled with phones also. Oh, there you go. Don't need any bits. Never know. Oh, we always need bits, don't we? What bits do I need? You got any American bits, Gambo? I need some American bits. Christopher says the telephone NBN system is rubbish here in Australia. In my area it keeps going out all the time. Yeah, it's rubbish here. What's really bad in this country is mobile phones. This is going to spark the comments going. Have you noticed with your mobile phone, now when it was only 2G and 3G, your mobile phone worked more or less everywhere, more or less all the time. And then when 4G came in, you got a 4G phone, you don't get as many bars on a 4G phone as you did on your 2G and 3G phone. And now you get a 5G phone and you get even less bars on that than you did on a 4G phone. What is going wrong with the telephone system? Could it be that they are trying to cram more users into the same amount of bandwidth that they had less users in before? Could it be there's less bandwidth in the call, so your call sounds crappy because there's not actually enough bandwidth to get enough data to get a decent audio signal out of it? Yeah. Whose telephone doesn't work as well as it did 3 years ago? Hands up. If your mobile phone now, notably, is more crackly and drops out more and you miss more calls than you did 3 years ago, hands up. Is it just me? I'm sure it's not. Gambo says, how's the red 746 upside down telephone going on? The red upside down 746 is here somewhere. I just can't get at it at the minute because it's at the bottom of a pile of other things. But yeah, it is here. It's not genuinely a red upside down 746. It's the foam that's been built out of bits. Yeah, and I think what happened was we said, yeah, I've got all these bits. What should we turn it into? And I think that was the leader on the vote. Spoon Trick says, I can't say I've noticed a difference on my mobile phone. Really? You surprise me. Dominic says, any plans for the allotment? I suppose it's out of season now for most things. Yeah, allotment's got a bit sort of neglected. I've got to go there and see if there's any apples on the apple trees. Yeah. Because hopefully there are. There were earlier in the season, but they weren't ready when I last looked at them. So I do need to go and have a look at my apple trees. So I've got 2 or 3 apple trees on the allotment. So I need to go and have a look at them. But yeah, it's got a bit sort of sidelined this year. I do need to go and get it sorted though. I really do. It's just time. There's just not enough hours in a day. There's really not enough hours in a day. Gambo says, I know you gave you the cover and handset for it. Cover, yeah, I know you gave you the cover and handset for it. Do you mean you know who gave me the cover and handset for it? Yeah, I think, did they come from different places? Different bits came from. What happened? How did it start? It wasn't just a chassis, was it? Because I've got a lot of chassis. Yeah, I don't quite know what happened there. I can't remember how that story started. Yeah, can't quite remember what happened there. But yeah, it's here somewhere. It's what I can see 2 red phones in the stack here, and I'm not sure which one is it. But yeah, there's lots of things to do. If I didn't get any new projects, I've got about 2 lifetimes worth of projects to do, I think. If I didn't get any new ones. The trouble is space to do things. It's just bench space I'm short of. It's working space I'm short of. Because if you look at this blooming bench where I am, this table where I am sat, where I am actually doing this from, if I can get a camera on it, and just look at all the stuff on here. And I can clear that off, and next day it'll be like that again. So I have this little area here. But yeah, there is just so much stuff, and just not enough space to sort it all out properly. Because in an ideal world, you have shelves with boxes on, and you put it all in categories. Or there's just not enough room to categorise everything. And that is a massive problem. God knows what is in this pile actually. Right, there's an extender cable for a computer disk drive, for the radio station. There's a load of cocktail sticks, which are used for various things, for getting dirt out of various little things that we're working on. There's some, I think they might be dry whiteboard markers. They are. They can be filed away. We'll put them somewhere. Right. And there's just little bits of things that I use, like a bit of steel wall and bits of a clock and yeah, little. Actually, that little bag's no good. I could sort this all out while I'm on the stream, couldn't I? Talking to you lot. There's another one of those there, look as well. So, yeah, there's just
all sorts of stuff. This is interesting. We were talking about trim foams earlier, weren't we? This is a bit just part of a switch to mount on a trim foam. Mounts on the front of a trim foam. But it's only part of it. Yeah, I've got all sorts. And of course, I've got Quink. Why have I got Quink? I've got Quink because I've got fountain pens. I don't know if I've shown you these before. But yeah, I quite like a good fountain pen. And they're really expensive now as well. Luckily, every now and again I find a cardboard box with one in the bottom. But so this is the latest one I got. I bought a little wooden box with some tools in from a vintage rally earlier this year, and in amongst those tools, in that little wooden box, was a fountain pen, and also, crucially, and these are brilliant, a really good quality bow pen as well. Now, if you don't know what a bow pen is, these are superb. If you are a modeller into model railways or whatever, building scale buildings and that, if you want to line out your model railway loco or draw a line on anything, this is the way to do it with a bow pen. They are superb. I had got some cheap ones that I got off eBay, but these ones have to be honed to make them work properly. You know, they're not as good. But this is a genuine old one that I got with this fountain pen in that box, and it's really good. So I got that, and then about a year before I got another box of tools where this one was in the bottom of it, this fountain pen, and a couple of years before that I mended a phone for somebody who, and what they do as a hobby is they mend fountain pens, and that guy taught me how to restore fountain pens, and I taught him how to restore his phone. In fact, I did it for him really. So then I took his phone round to him, and while I was round there one Sunday morning, he taught me to restore fountain pens and gave me 2 pens that we restored on the spot there that Sunday morning. That's these 2, and this one, and this is my favourite, this green one. I think this is lovely, this. It doesn't really show up how this sort of shimmers in the light. It's like iridescent on the camera, but it's a really nice pen, that. So yeah, so there are the fountain pens and the bow pen as well. And before we go, I'll give you a quick demo of the bow pen if you like. It's amazing how many people haven't seen a bow pen, or have seen them but not realised what they are. You might have seen them in like a technical drawing set or something like that and go, what's that? And I think very few people these days have ever used one. But the beauty of them is you can use ink in them, or you can use paint in them, you know, Humbrol paints and that, you know, for like modeller's paints and stuff. You can put paint in these, and what it actually is, if I get it close up there, you see, is it's a 2-part thing with a little wheel, and you can close up or open the ends, and what happens is paint gets in between here with capillary action when you dip it in some paint or in some ink, and then depending on how wide you've set it depends on how wide a line it draws. You can't make it too wide obviously, but so you do that, and you get a bit of paper or whatever you want to write on. I get that back in focus again. So here's my bit of paper. This is going to swap out on the camera, isn't it? We'll do it with Quink, but like I say, you can do it with paint, colours, do whatever colour you want with paint. I did some gold on a sewing machine a while back. You just dip it in there, get the excess off the outside of it, then you kind of hold the pen sideways on, just go like that, and it just draws a line, and you can open it up a bit. See, I've opened it too much there, it won't do a line that wide, but it'll do a line like that, won't it? So you can go and do a fairly wide line, or you can set it much closer together and do a much thinner line like that. And when you do a thin line, you can do lots of them, because you can turn it and do that sort of thing with it. They're brilliant fun, they really are, and incredibly easy to draw a pretty straight line with them actually. You can just go without any effort and draw an almost perfectly straight line, and you can't do that with an ordinary pen. I've got no idea why, but you can do things like that, you see. And then, like what we used to do on some of the correct trams in the corners, was you used to do this sort of thing. I've not done that very well, but used to do that sort of thing on them. Like that sort of thing, like on the corners. But if I then just run it out of ink, rub the excess off, and if I get this close to the thing, you can see, perhaps, I'm hoping, you see my thick line there and my very thin line at the side of it. That's how you vary what you draw with a bow pen. So yeah, it's a brilliant piece of kit. So if you see one of these ever, pick it up, because they are a brilliant little thing. And particularly if it's an old one, it'll be a good quality one, it'll probably write really well. But yeah, that's a bow pen for you. Right, okay. Right, that is almost it for another day. I will just check back in with the chat. Spoon Trick says, I've had to reinstall FreePBX on my Raspberry Pi because the SD card died. I tried for many hours to get it to boot from USB, but it proved near impossible. What you need is a thin client and a thing called Ask Linux. Buy a thin client for about £10–15, and then a thing called Ask Linux, which is actually a kind of Linux distribution coupled with Asterisk, and that will do what you do with FreePBX on your Raspberry Pi, but it'll do it a lot cheaper. Gambo says we'll be away to Lancaster Uni next weekend, as watching a band called Massive Wagons play over 2 nights and making a live album out of it. Excellent. Gambo says the red upside down phone, I donated the cover cord and handset. I think you were looking
for a bracket that you have to convert it. I think I found the bracket. I'll have to dig it out, Gambo. When we come back in a couple of weeks' time, I'll dig it out and see where we've got to with it. But yeah, I do remember you doing that. You sending the I don't know how it started that. I think it might have been Arthur who sent the chassis, and then you sent the cover. Dominic says, Gambo, you might feature on the album. You never know. Spoon Trick says, you should have seen my desk when I tested out my plan set phone. Had to take about 4 phones to get 2 running with the plan set. Yeah, been there, done that. I've never actually put a full plan set together. I've got all the most of the bits, I think, to do them. And somebody ages ago said, why don't you put a plan set together? That would make an interesting video. And I've never got round to it, mainly because I've never quite figured out how to do it, because it's quite a complicated thing, isn't it? But I think there's a big switch block, isn't there? There's a big block that all the wires need to go into, and I think that might be the only bit that I'm missing. Christopher says, NBN workers tell me I have to use a new telephone and not my old telephones. I tell the workers I'm not getting a new telephone. I'm going to keep my 1968 GPO746 phone in service. Yeah, they don't like it when there's something that you know more about than they do. That's the thing. Good on you, Christopher. He says, the PBX I use for my old telephones is the Panasonic TDA30 PBX to do pulse to DTMF. Yeah, the Panasonic PBXs are quite good at pulse to DTMF. Gambo says, I'm hoping to make an appearance on the album, as we'll be wearing my black kilt for both shows. Excellent. Spoon Trick says, is that sort of pen for illustration, or can it do writing as well? I've never heard of seen these pens before. You can sort of write with them, but they're not very good for writing for. Because there's a kind of split in them, you have to sort of drag them sideways. So where that, see how it's got like 2 halves to it, you have to sort of go sideways with it. So that's your piece of paper there. You don't write like that with it. You turn it on its side, something, and then do that with it. So really, it's for drawing straight lines. They were used by draftsmen, I think, mainly. Spoon Trick says, if you want to pick up more views, I suggest you do a video to explain the accident. Yeah, I could do, couldn't I? Or I could just clip it out of this and repost it. Dominic says, going to head off in a moment. See everyone in a fortnight. Yeah, just in case you joined the party late, not on next week, because I've got a super busy weekend next week. But hopefully back here in a fortnight's time. Gambo says, that red phone says you had a chassis with no cover or handset, so we all voted what colour to make it. Planet was from Wesley and myself, I think. It might have been Wesley. I can't remember. I've had a sleep since then. Spoon Trick says, the real difficulty with the plan set is finding cables with enough pairs. Luckily I have some Cat 6A cable, which I use the insulation as the all-important ninth conductor, which is only used for one extension. Yeah, because I think I've got some cable that is 4 pairs, so that's only 8 conductors, isn't it? Yeah, I'll have to have a look into this plan set thing. There's a lot of things I need to do. I just need more time. I just need... Can we have an extra... I reckon we should have an extra day in the week and just not so many weeks in the year. Let's just have an extra day in each week, but not as many weeks in the year. Yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah, we'll have Andy Day. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Andy Day, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah. Yeah. When I become Prime Minister, we'll implement that. I'll have an extra day in each week. Yeah. Right, that is, I think, then about as far as we go for this week. Just going to give it another quick plug. If you've enjoyed what you've seen here today and you want to make a little donation towards the funds for keeping the lights on, go here. buymeacoffee.com/Andy Shed, and you can put a couple of quid in the tip jar there. And like I say, I don't spend it all on coffee. Some of it I spend on cream buns. But anyway, that is about it for now. Thanks if you have stuck with it all the way through. Congratulations, you are not a loony lefty, because I'm sure they've all got irate and switched off by now, and are probably even now ringing their local police station and trying to get somebody to come and arrest me for hurty words. Yes, so and I'll leave you with this thought this week. Greta Thunberg's new haircut makes her look a lot like He-Man. Think about it. Until next time, have a fantastic week ahead, whatever you are doing. Indeed, have a fantastic fortnight. Spoon Trick says, do you want to meet up on Saturday or any day? Yes, at some point, Spoon Tricks. Yeah, whereabouts are you, by the way, Spoony? What part of the world are you in? Spoon Trick says Andy Day. Yes, that's going to be the extra day in the week. And Christopher says he'll be doing a Heritage Diesel Train video as well, so that'll be one not to be missed too. Go on to the Christopher 2000 YouTube channel to see that. Right, I really must get off of here before my computer turns back into a pumpkin. Spoon Trick says he's in Leeds. Oh, you're not too far away then. You're in Leeds! Crikey, you're in Leeds. Yeah, marvellous. Been to Leeds. Went to see Belinda Carlisle playing Leeds City Hall. Yeah, been there. Walking down the hedgerow in the pouring rain. Yeah, we will do something, Spoon Tricks. Remind me when we come back in a couple of weeks' time, and hopefully I will have caught up on a few things by then. Christopher says his video will be out on Sunday, so when you're not watching this next Sunday, you could be watching his video about his little trip on the train. But from me, for now, have a fantastic couple of weeks ahead. As I say, we will see you here around about the same time, same place in 2 weeks' time. Same time, same place, not same plan, same time, same place in 2 weeks' time, right? 2 weeks, not next week, week after. And we will then be back, as Arnie would say. But from me for now, have a good one out there, and yeah, see you next time. Bye for now, everybody.